I never thought the house I built with my own hands would one day try to tell me a secret. For 30 years it's been my safe place, a little wooden home on the edge of Ohio, where the evenings smell like pine and rain, and the silence feels almost kind. After my wife passed, it became my whole world. Every nail, every beam carried a memory of her laughter echoing through the kitchen. I still keep myself busy fixing things that don't really need fixing. Maybe that's what men like me do when we're trying not to think too much. The radio in the garage still plays her favorite station, and the smell of engine oil and coffee feels like company. That morning, I was rewiring the security cameras. They'd been dead for 2 weeks since the last storm. It took me 3 hours and more patience than I thought I still had. But eventually, every lens came back to life. The screens lit up, showing every corner of the house, the porch, the basement, the hallway I walked 1,000 times. It felt good to see everything again. Safe. Controlled. What I didn't know was that those cameras would soon show me something no father should ever see. And once I pressed play, nothing in that house ever felt safe again. That evening, Ethan and Lily came over for dinner just like they always did on Fridays. It was our little tradition. They brought a fresh apple pie from the bakery downtown and a bottle of red wine they said I'd love. From the outside, everything looked perfectly normal, a family meal between a father and his only son. But sometimes normal can feel rehearsed. As we sat down, I noticed how Ethan's laugh didn't sound quite right. It was too quick, too careful, like he was forcing it. He barely looked at me. Lily, on the other hand, was all smiles, her charm polished and bright. Yet there was something off behind her eyes, like a flicker of calculation hiding behind the warmth. At first I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just stress. Maybe I'd been alone too long, reading too much into things. But then Lily started asking questions simple at first, almost harmless. She asked about the house, the repairs, the insurance. She wondered how much the property was worth these days, whether I'd thought about updating my coverage. Her tone was light, even playful, but every word carried weight. I tried to laugh it off to change the subject, but she steered it right back every time. Ethan sat silent, cutting his food into tiny pieces he never ate. The way he avoided my eyes told me everything his mouth refused to say. Something in my chest tightened. I'd worked my whole life to make sure that boy had a home to come back to, and now, for the first time, I didn't feel safe in my own kitchen. The air felt colder, heavier. The warmth of the house I built was still there, but it wasn't mine anymore. When dinner ended, I walked them to the door with a smile, pretending not to notice the tremor in my hands. I didn't know what was wrong yet, but deep down, I knew something had changed. And whatever it was already inside my house. I was just about to tell Ethan and Lily that the cameras were working again when the phone rang. Mrs. Henderson, my neighbor from across the street, was on the line. She sounded flustered. A pipe had burst in her basement, and water was spreading fast. Her husband had passed away last year, and she didn't know who else to call. I've always believed in helping neighbors. You don't just live next to people for decades and ignore them when they're in trouble. So I grabbed my toolbox, apologized to Ethan and Lily for cutting dinner short, and told them I'd be back soon. Lily smiled politely, a little too quickly, and Ethan gave me a nod without meeting my eyes. I didn't think much of it at the time. As I stepped out into the chilly night, the porch light flickered behind me. I remember thinking I should fix that too. Funny how our minds hang on to small details when the big ones slip away. Because in that moment, I completely forgot to mention one thing, that the security system was back online, every camera watching, every mic recording. That simple oversight would become the most important mistake of my life. While I was downstairs at Mrs. Henderson's tightening valves and clearing her flooded basement, Ethan and Lily were alone in my house. And the cameras I had just repaired, those quiet, blinking eyes I'd ignored for weeks, were silently capturing what would soon make my heart stop. Sometimes life doesn't warn you when it turns a corner. Sometimes it just rings a phone in the middle of dinner and waits to see what you'll forget to say. The next morning started quietly, the kind of calm that feels undeserved. I brewed my coffee, opened the curtains, and decided to run a full check on the security system I'd fixed the day before. It felt like routine something to pass the time. I didn't expect anything unusual. When the monitor flickered on, every room came into view, still and familiar. The living room, the hallway, then the basement. Everything seemed normal until I noticed movement. Ethan and Lily. They weren't supposed to be there. The timestamp showed it was just after 10 in the morning. I watched as they entered through the front door, moving like people who didn't want to be seen. Ethan looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder, while Lily's movements were deliberate, steady. She went straight to my desk and began rifling through my papers. At first, I thought they were looking for something harmless, a bill maybe, or an old document. But then Lily's voice came through the speakers, cold and calm. She was talking about wires voltage and how easy it would be to make an accident look real. The words didn't hit me all at once. They slid in slowly, sharp and cold until my body went rigid. She said the plan was to stage an electrical accident in the basement. She even timed it out Sunday morning around 8. Ethan hesitated, his voice shaky. He asked if there wasn't another way. But she shut him down fast, her tone dripping with control. She told him it had to look natural, that I was always working with wiring anyway, that no one would question a 70-year-old man falling down a flight of stairs. I could hardly breathe. My son, my only child, was sitting beside her, nodding. The boy I'd taught how to change a fuse, the one I stayed up nights helping through college, now planning how to collect on my life insurance. I felt something inside me crack, part disbelief, part heartbreak. But beneath that pain was something else, a quiet, steady awareness that if I wanted to stay alive, I had to think clearly. I had to watch, listen, and wait. As the footage continued, I realized this wasn't a moment of greed or desperation. It was a plan, cold, rehearsed, efficient. And in that instant, I understood the cameras I'd repaired hadn't just captured my home. They had caught a conspiracy unfolding right in front of me. Sometimes survival doesn't come from strength or luck. It comes from paying attention even when what you see breaks your heart. I replayed the footage more times than I can count, hoping I'd somehow misunderstood what I heard, but the words were clear cruel in their calmness. I turned up the audio and listened again this time, catching details I'd missed before, names, places, hints of something bigger than just my son's desperation. That's when I heard it. Lily mentioned 2 other people. Harold Peterson in Toledo, Dorothy Mitchell in Akron. Both older, both conveniently dead. She spoke of them the way a contractor talks about completed jobs, efficient, detached, already forgotten. I sat there frozen. The realization hit me like a slow, heavy wave. Lily wasn't just some manipulative daughter-in-law. She had done this before, changed her name, moved to a new town, found a new family. Each time an older person died suddenly and quietly, their property and insurance transferred within weeks. It wasn't random. It was a pattern, a business. Ethan wasn't her first accomplice either. From what I could tell, he was her next pawn. My son, buried in $60,000 of gambling debt, was exactly the kind of man she preyed on. Vulnerable, scared, and willing to believe that one accident could make everything right. I wanted to scream, to march into that living room and demand answers. But shock kept me still. Beneath the anger, something colder began to form clarity. This wasn't just a betrayal of family. It was organized, methodical murder disguised as bad luck. That's when my fear shifted into focus. If I reacted too soon, they'd vanish like she had before. But if I stayed quiet, I could turn her own arrogance into evidence. Lily had made a mistake this time. She'd targeted a man who spent his life working with wires, circuits, and surveillance. She assumed my age meant weakness. What she didn't realize was that experience can be the sharpest weapon of all. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding, but mind steady. For the first time, I stopped feeling like a victim and started thinking like an electrician again. Someone who understands how to trace every connection until the truth lights up. And in that moment, I made myself a promise they wouldn't see me coming. I didn't waste the morning on fear. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to Clara Dawson's office. She'd handled a contract dispute for me years ago and never missed a detail. I laid out everything, the footage, the voices, the timing. Clara didn't flinch. She started a checklist the way good lawyers do. First, protect the target. Then, build the case. Then, spring the trap. She called Detective Reed from the Elder Crimes Unit and looped me in. While we waited for him to arrive, Clara scheduled a same-day cognitive evaluation with Dr. Nolan, my longtime physician. Not because I doubted myself, but because predators like Lily love to claim the victim is confused. Paper beats rumor. A clean competency exam shuts that door before they can open it. By early afternoon, Dr. Nolan had me doing memory drills and problem solving. He's known me for years and didn't sugarcoat it. "You're sharp," he said. He typed up a formal report on the spot. Meanwhile, Clara filed precautionary holds on my accounts, flagged my insurance, and placed a temporary block on any property transfers. Simple moves, but powerful. If someone tries to change a beneficiary or rush a sale, alarms go off. Back home, I got to work where I'm strongest: wires and angles. I added 2 micro cameras in the basement joists and another near the stairwell where Lily wanted the fall to look natural. I set redundant recorders with separate power sources. I mirrored every feed to a hidden drive and pushed copies to cloud storage I'd set up years ago but never used. With surveillance, 1 is none, and 2 is 1. If they smash a device, the evidence lives somewhere they can't reach. Detective Reed came by at dusk. We walked the house, planned entry points, rehearsed the timeline. He advised me to keep my routine. No confrontations, no warnings, let them believe they are in control. I nodded. Silence can be louder than shouting. That night the house hummed with a calm I hadn't felt since the storm. The plan was simple. Let their steps trigger mine. Let their arrogance write the ending. And when the time came, make sure the truth had more than one way out. Saturday night arrived like a slow tide. The kind of night where every sound seems louder and every minute stretches out. I moved through my house deliberately practicing the part I had to play. A little slower than usual when I answered the phone. A stumble here, a half-forgotten word there. Just enough to make Ethan and Lily believe what they wanted to believe, that I was slipping, that their plan was already working. When they called to check in on me, I let my voice wander, mixing up small details, playing the role of a tired old man. I knew how predators think. They feed on weakness. Sometimes showing them a weakness you control is the best bait you'll ever set. After the call, I went room to room in the dark. I touched every wire, every hidden camera, every recorder the way a pilot checks an aircraft before takeoff. Each blink of a green light was another lifeline. Outside, Detective Reed's team was setting up quietly. Unmarked cars parked down the street. A man with a coffee cup walked his dog past my driveway twice. It all looked normal, but I knew the net was forming. I didn't sleep. The clock on my wall became a metronome for my heartbeat. 1 hour closer, then another. I sat in my workshop, hands folded, eyes on the monitors, as the house breathed around me. This was the same basement they thought would become my grave. Instead, it was my command post. Through the night, memories drifted in teaching Ethan to ride a bike, helping him build his first science project. All the times I'd thought my love would be enough to guide him. Those thoughts hurt more than the fear did, but they also kept me steady. Because I wasn't just fighting for my life anymore. I was fighting to end the cycle Lily had built. By 5 a.m., the sky outside was turning the color of steel. I poured another coffee, checked the feeds one last time, and whispered to myself what my father used to say, before a big job measure, twice cut once. In a few hours the trap would spring, and for the first time in days, I felt ready. At exactly 8 o'clock the front door opened with a soft creak. Ethan stepped in first, holding a bouquet of daisies, the same kind his mother used to love. Lily followed close behind her, smile polished and bright, a thermos of coffee in her hand. They looked like a picture of concern, the devoted son and caring daughter-in-law checking on the old man. I stayed seated in my chair, the tablet already resting on my lap. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times, and still my hands shook just a little. When Ethan greeted me, I nodded, my voice calm. "You're just in time," I said, turning the tablet toward them. The screen came alive. Their own voices filled the room. Lily's cold tone cut through the quiet, describing exactly how they'd stage my accident. Ethan's words followed low and uncertain. The sound of guilt caught between breaths. For a moment, no one moved. Then I watched the color drain from Lily's face. Her mask slipped. She looked around the room, searching for a way out that wasn't there. Ethan stood frozen, his bouquet trembling in his hands. He started to speak, but nothing came out. That silence said more than any apology could. Then came the sound I'd been waiting for. The front door bursting open. Heavy footsteps, the unmistakable command of trained voices. Detective Reed and his team swept in, firm and efficient. Within seconds, Lily was on the floor, handcuffed. Her perfect calm shattered into panic. Ethan didn't resist. He simply sank into the couch, head in his hands, crying like a child who finally realized the cost of his choices. I stayed where I was, the tablet still glowing in my lap. The footage looped quietly behind their voices, a reminder of everything that had led us here. I didn't feel triumph, just relief, heavy and quiet, like the kind that comes after surviving a storm you knew was coming, but hoped would pass you by. When the officers led them out, Lily's eyes met mine for a second. No anger, no remorse, just disbelief that her game was finally over. As the door closed behind them, the house fell still again. The same walls, the same furniture, but the air was different. For the first time in weeks, it felt clean. I turned off the tablet and whispered to the empty room, "We're done." Then I let out the breath I'd been holding since the cameras came back to life. The trial wrapped up on a gray Thursday morning. I sat in the back row of the courtroom, watching the same woman who'd once called me Dad stand before the judge with her wrists bound. Her name wasn't Lily anymore. It was Jennifer Wallace, and the list of charges was long, multiple counts of fraud, elder abuse, and 2 confirmed murders before she ever stepped into my home. The verdict came quickly. Life in prison, no chance of parole. Ethan's sentence followed. 10 years for conspiracy and financial crimes. When the judge spoke his name, he couldn't lift his head. I wanted to hate him, but hate has a way of eating what's left of your soul. So instead, I just let go. Somewhere between the betrayal and the trial, I'd realized that forgiveness isn't about freeing them. It's about freeing yourself. Walking out of that courthouse, I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty but alive. For a man my age, that's enough to start over. The weeks that followed were quiet. Reporters called, neighbors dropped by with casseroles and condolences. Most wanted to talk about survival, but I wanted to talk about prevention, about how easily trust can be weaponized, how family isn't always safe, and how the smallest act of awareness, a working camera, a backup plan, can save a life. I began visiting senior centers, sharing my story with anyone willing to listen. Some people came for advice, others for reassurance. I told them the same thing every time. Staying alert isn't paranoia, it's preparation. I showed them how to set up simple home surveillance, how to protect their finances, and how to trust their instincts when something doesn't feel right. At my first workshop, someone asked me what lesson I'd taken from all of this. I took a deep breath and said, "A camera doesn't just watch the outside world. Sometimes it shows us what we've been too afraid to see inside our own walls, the betrayal, the truth, the strength we didn't know we had." The room went quiet for a long time after that, and in the silence I understood something deeper. The same house that almost became my grave had now become a reminder that awareness, not fear, is what keeps us alive. I may have lost my family, but I gained a purpose. If my story helps one person avoid what I went through, then none of it was in vain. Sometimes survival isn't just about living through the storm. It's about making sure no one else has to face it alone.